we ready?
We can go. Good.
Was that a yes?
Yes.
All right. So we want to do the countdown.
Countdown.
Jane, we're ready for the countdown? We are live.
We are live.
We are live.
All right. Well, welcome everyone to this, the June 26th, 2004 meeting of the New York State Commission on Ethics and Lobbying in Government. I'll ask our chair, Mr. Sanford Berlin, if he will declare a quorum is present and any other information that we need in order to proceed with the official business of this commission. Mr. Berlin.
Chair Davey, thank you. I'd accept the promotion, but I don't think I can, so I'll just introduce myself as Executive Director. And I'll say that the meeting is being held pursuant to and in accordance with the provisions of the state's Open Meetings Law and Executive Law Section 94. The conference room we're using at the Commission's offices in Albany at 540 Broadway, and the meeting room we're using at the New York State Conference Center at 25 Beaver Street in Manhattan are open to the public during public session. And public session is also being live streamed, and the link can be found on our website, ethics.ny.gov. In addition, Chair Davey is attending today's meeting remotely by video conference pursuant to Section 103-A of the Public Officers Law and the Commission's procedures for member video conferencing pursuant to that provision. And Commissioner Groenewegen will also be joining the meeting pursuant to those same provisions. And I can state that with respect to a quorum, we have 6 commissioners present at the 2 offices that are open to the public. So we do have a quorum.
Excellent. Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the minutes for the public session of May 22nd, 2024? Is there such a motion?
So moved. Second.
Sounds like Vice Chair Austin and Commissioner Cardozo. Corrections to the minutes. Anyone?
Just
That's per executive session.
Just executive. There were no corrections that staff received on the public session minutes from May 22nd.
So are we ready to vote? All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. The ayes have it. The minutes for the public session of May 22nd, 2024 are approved. Report from staff, operations update.
Yes, thank you, Chair Davey. The operations update is under tab B in the agenda book. As we have been doing for a year now, the report includes, in addition to relevant activity figures for the most recent month, May of 2024's first column, it also includes comparisons to the prior month, April 2024, comparable monthly and year-to-date periods in 2023, which are columns 3 and 5. And that will be for the period January through May of 2023. And then the current year-to-date is column 4. I call the Commission's attention to the first page of the report, investigations. The Commission received a total of 17 tips, complaints, and referrals. It's identical to the April figure. You received notice of those new incoming matters in the weekly notifications sent by staff. A total of 4 matters were closed. In May, all of those were COLIG matters, and the ending pending and open investigations were 156 and 47 respectively. In other words, a net change of plus 13. In addition, 1 new investigation was opened, and you received notice of that as well in the weekly notifications. And with that, I'll turn this over to Brian Weinberg for any additional information. Brian, and Mike Antolini, Deputy Director of Investigations and Enforcement.
Thank you. We're here. As you can see, we're still issuing 15-day letters and pursuing investigations and exploring our options and noticing cases for hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Call the Commission's attention to page 2 of the report, ethics. As you will see, we've kind of reached a steady state in inquiries, total guidance requests in May were 104 as compared to 105 in the preceding months. You will see that the year-to-date figure is almost 40% higher than the comparable period in 2023. So we're still running at a fairly high level of guidance inquiries. Michael Sand, Director of Ethics.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to introduce two new associates that have joined the agency in this month. They're sitting at the table in Albany, Megan Fleming and Teresa Wells. They they fulfilled the full staffing of the guidance unit. So we're very happy to have them join us. Please welcome them to the agency.
Thank you and welcome.
And I think Sandy summarized the numbers pretty well. We're still running at a pretty good clip in the guidance unit at over 100 requests per month. And that's been running pretty steadily now for several months. So it looks like the result of something real. But can't really say what it is. Probably is the increased training, I would imagine. And also in May, we had a lot of questions about the financial disclosure because the deadline was in the middle of that month. So that contributed to high numbers as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will add the addition of Megan and Teresa is it's quite welcome. Not only does it mean that Michael and team can stay on top and remain current in processing the guidance requests that are coming in, it's also freeing up staff who have been double teaming and doing double duty in working this through. So welcome. Next, page 3, lobbying, noticeable monthly increase in lobbyists, 254, and clients 85 in May over April. Notably, 1,000 new registrations or registration amendments were filed in May, which is substantial. May was a bi-monthly filing period, and over 6,200 BIMO reports or amendments were filed in that period. And as I've previously noted, the annual change from the comparable period last year is in part attributable to the fact that this is the second year in the biennial registration period. So the numbers will normally increase, but a substantial increase over that period of time. And with that, I will turn it over to Carol Quinn, our Director of Lobbying.
Okay, so the only thing I could add on that, and this is just very cyclical. So May, like you pointed out, we had a lot of filings come in. That's very normal. The next filing deadline is July 15th. That will be especially large because that is the bi-monthly deadline and the client semi-annual report deadline. So these numbers are very typical for covering a month of a filing deadline. The only other thing I would mention and I'd like to highlight is, we did spend a lot of time in our unit working on the annual report, and I wanted to shout out a thank you to Amy Nicotero, who's the Deputy Director of Discrepancies, and she's really essential to gathering, fixing discrepancies between filings of lobbyists and clients, and also gathering accurate data and statistics. So I just wanted to thank her especially for that, and that's all.
Right, thank you. We'll talk a little bit about the annual report. A major effort by everyone, and all the effort is still appreciated. Next, we have financial disclosure statistics. Those are on page 4. May 15th was the deadline for non-academic filers. And you can see that between April and May, over 24,000 financial disclosure statements were received. There are in excess of 4,000 that are still outstanding, but the group clearly was quite busy in that period of time. And I will turn to Melinda Funk, Deputy Director for Financial Disclosure Statements. Some texture to that. Melinda?
Good morning, everyone. Just to update you in June, we issued just over 4,000 FELDA files, and we have resolved almost 2,000 of them. So almost half of them have filed, and they have until Friday to comply before my staff begins outreach to gain compliance on Monday. I took a look at the numbers from last year in June when we issued failed to files, and we issued 701 less this year than last year.
Any particular explanation for that?
I think the information is getting out more with regards to the financial disclosure filing, and I think the trainings are helping individuals understand the requirements. So now when they're seeing our emails, they're responding more quickly.
Good. I mean, there has been a noticeable decrease in the number of outstanding filings certainly over last year. Where it was a much larger number in that period of time. Thank you. Next, page 5, training. Training continues to move along at a fairly high level. Our goal, as we previously stated, is adopted by the commission, is to have by the end of this calendar year, by the end of December 2024, every employee and officer in the executive branch of state government take at least one ethics training course, either the on-demand course, the live, whether it's online or in person, comprehensive ethics training course. The numbers are remaining up. It's important, I will say, that not only our staff, but ethics officers and trainers at the over 380 agencies in the executive branch who've been doing a marvelous job, really a remarkable job in training their workforces. Keep up the effort and maintain the momentum that they have achieved. At this point, more than 200,000 employees have received training, and we have to get up to that 300,000 plus figure by the end of the year. And with that, and let me add, we're doing our part. Our staff has been working very closely with state ITS, Information Technology Services, to improve the technology. We have, in February, the first phase of our training monitoring system, an aggregate vehicle was launched. And earlier this month, on June 13, phase 2 of the system went live. And that's going to enable us and agency ethics officers to manage training, and that includes scheduling, monitoring, reporting, and everything else that goes into ensuring that everybody who needs to is taking their training across all 380 plus of those agencies, and ideally capture every single worker, employee and public officer in the executive branch. It's a big lift. We already have over 200,000 individual data points for individual employees in the system, over 60,000 email addresses. There's a good deal of populating that's yet to be done, but we're on the way. And I have to congratulate our training staff, in particular, Marlena Diaz and Megan Hennigan, for the work they put in working with IPS to get that launched and to get it done on time. And with that, I'll turn this over to them. Marlena, Megan?
Well, after that introduction, there's not much more left for me to say. As Sandy mentioned, we did launch phase 2 on June 13th. As he mentioned, it was also a huge undertaking between us and our ITS group, a massive undertaking. We are in the process of helping agencies now transition from reporting those agency-wide aggregate training stats to individual employee level. This has created a huge undertaking between us, ITS, our ethics officers, and our other agency partners. As of right now, we have over 200,000 employee records provided to us by that OSC data sharing agreement. We have over 83,000 emails. I'm receiving spreadsheets daily from agencies who are updating those email addresses for us so that we can continue to boost those numbers. In addition to, we have uploaded all of the training records, which is over 45,000 training records of every employee that's taken that on-demand online training available in SLMS. My training team here is working diligently on updating our own training records, providing that information to agency users to upload on our live training efforts, as well as assisting them in being able to upload their data as well. In conjunction to all of this, we're also working on putting together content right now for a comprehensive ethics forum that will present to agency users statewide, giving them detailed information about the launch, as well as providing a demonstration and answering all types of questions. So we're very, very busy here in the training unit.
Thank you. I should add too, in addition to everything that Marlena has talked about, the unit is also working with the lobbying group. NYCRR does have a mandatory triennial ethics training requirement, not only for lobbyists, but now for lobbying clients. And as you can see in the training statistics, lobbyists and clients are continuing to take the course. It's an online course. Carol will be talking about some innovations in the regulations to deal with the certifications a little bit later in the agenda. But now, well over 80% of lobbyists and clients are in compliance with the requirement. The goal is to have 100%, and we're working toward it. But it's a major achievement as well. It was a big training requirement.
I have a question. These statistics are amazing, and my compliments to the staff that's taking this. Have you given any consideration to training the commissioners? After all, we're the ones who are enforcing both the ethics training for employees and for lobbyists. And it would seem to me that it would be very useful to simply schedule training to and now at the present time, 8 commissioners, and within the next couple of months when you have a training, simply suggest that the commissioners join that online training.
Yes, and I will say, Commissioner, that all commissioners are, you as well as everyone else on the executive side, are subject to the mandatory training requirements, and you are all in compliance. And you will be, in this current year, you will be scheduled for your trainings as well, just as you were in the prior year. So absolutely. And I will add that we do have plans for, in response to a proposal that had been made previously, we have plans to incorporate commissioner introductions, if you will, and perhaps some other elements into trainings going forward. We just have to work out the logistics for making that happen.
Thank you.
But so not only will you be subject to the requirement, you will actually be principals in the propounding of the trainings as we move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. I can't say enough to thank everybody who's been involved in training and getting the trainings done, both here and across the executive branch and ITS. And everybody else who's been part of this effort. And there are other departments in state government that have been instrumental in making it possible for the data flow to be as smooth as it has been. It's really, I can't say enough. It's been a remarkable achievement, and I congratulate everybody who has participated in that. Unless there's anything else on training, next, page 6, audit and review. The group is continuing to conduct reviews of financial disclosure statements, both random and targeted, as well as random reviews, audits of lobby filings. The numbers are variable. That's partly seasonable and partly attributable to the work that the unit is doing in upgrading their software. As you can see, the year-to-date figures in particular for targeted FDS reviews are substantially up, notwithstanding the extra work that's been going into implementing the new, somewhat more sophisticated software. And let me introduce Gareth Perrin, who's Deputy Director for Compliance Audit and Review, who has some additional information to pass along. Gareth?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Yeah, as the judge said there, our numbers seem like they dipped from last month to this month. And so as we're transitioning to the new software,
If I may, Gareth, we lost the signal for a couple of minutes. Could you start again, please?
yes, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. For the lobbying numbers, as we're transitioning from the old software, the Teammate AM software, to the new software that we're installing now, they call it the Teammate Plus. So that migration is going on right now, and when we're migrating the old information over from the old system to the new system, it shuts the whole system down. So there, on several occasions, when we're migrating information over from the old system to the new system, we can't even use the software. So in addition to dedicating a great deal of time to the implementation process, the migration process, moving the information over, shuts the software down. So so we lose a great deal of time there and a great deal of ability to do audit work. But once we've gone through that process and coming up here in the next month, our numbers should pick up and we should sort of get back to where we were before. And so that dip in production there is just a temporary blip. Thank you.
Gareth, thank you. Any questions? Was there a question? I lost the...
New York.
All right, thank you. I will add, we'll talk about it in a little bit. We do have plans, or are in the process of augmenting the resources that are available to Gareth, which will make it possible to actually expand the number of audits and reviews that they conduct. Something we're very much looking forward to. And finally, the operations report, page 7, Public Information Office with respect to FOIL requests. You can see the workload has doubled over the past month, May over April, from 16 requests in April to 29 received in May, with 31 responses, several thousand pages of documents produced. And although Gareth didn't mention it, a good deal of that actually involved a burden imposed on Gareth's group in responding to requests. But I will turn it over to Emily to add more detail.
Sure.
Emily DeSantis, our Director of Communications, and many other things.
The bulk of the increase is due to an increase in the number of FDSs that have been requested in May since the filing deadline of May 15th, as well as for the primary candidates for the legislative races. So we've gotten those out. And I will note that last week we also posted all of the FDSs for the state legislature. The legislature, the LEC, sent them over early in advance of the deadline, and we pretty much dropped everything to get them redacted and posted. So they were all online as of Thursday. So the 13 legislators this year are online reviewing.
Thank you. Any questions? And maybe this is a good point in the agenda to talk about the annual report, if that makes sense, Emily.
Sure.
I mean, I have to say we did, given the fact that the primaries are occurring yesterday and that we had only received the incumbents' financial disclosure statements, I think last Monday.
Yeah.
We had very limited time. Emily's group had very limited time to go through those and get those posted online in advance of the primary. And as Emily said, the group pretty much had to drop everything else, which included our intended release of the annual report, which is quite a substantial document. And notwithstanding all of the work that was going into getting financial disclosure statements out and responding to the many requests that came in, FOIL requests that came in for financial disclosure statements and other information, Emily and her team did get the annual report out yesterday. It's quite an impressive document. I don't want to steal anyone's thunder on that. It was a record-breaking year on the lobbying side, 2023. A year of substantial activity on the training side by the agency. A period of tremendous activity by the investigation and enforcement unit. We had litigation to handle. And I think the report with all the appendices is in excess of 800 pages.
Yeah.
I congratulate everybody throughout the agency for the work that went into that report. It's a group effort. Emily handles the logistics, the assembly, and a good deal of the drafting and massaging of it, and the PR related to it. And it's truly an impressive document.
Don't forget the pretty graphics. Taylor works on those.
I'm not forgetting the pretty graphics. I have them in mind. I think the graphics are extraordinary. I'm a big fan of pie charts, but I like linear charts as well. But I think the report speaks for itself.
And the response seems to have
agency,
been.
and we'll talk about it more on the staffing side. We're not at full complement yet. We're actively recruiting, and I'll talk about that in detail later in the agenda. But everybody truly pitched in, not only in putting the report together, but in doing the work that the report reflects, which is remarkable. So I congratulate everyone on the work.
Yeah, and
that was the,
I'd like to do the same and just say that the response, at least in the press, has been very impressive. And it's a tribute up to the report that the press has taken it as seriously as they have. So I'd like to congratulate the staff too on a really excellent job on the annual report.
thank you. On behalf of staff, thank you. Unless there are any other questions, let me just briefly say we are actively interviewing for a number of positions. Obviously, Teresa and Megan are the product of the recruiting efforts that have been underway. We have conducted interviews now. We have a long vacant position of Deputy Director of Administration. We have some excellent candidates. And we are recruiting for a number of other positions which are posted on the website and on the New York Jobs website as well. There's some additional positions we're creating that I'm going to talk about, including, as I mentioned, the Assistant Director of the Compliance and Audit and Review Unit, and filling some other positions that need to be filled and moving some other things around. But we'll talk about that in greater detail. Unless there are any questions, the next item I have is the budget update under tab C. And just to summarize, the budget that was enacted for the agency is inclusive of the ask that we made for the current fiscal year, with an additional increment of about $135,000 to cover the mandatory increases on the personal services side of the budget. We did not get an increase in the NPS, the non-personal services side of the budget, and we've been managing through cash transfers, so that's what we will be doing through the course of the year. But we are moving along. We anticipate, as we fill out the vacancies in the agency, essentially using most of the budget, if not all of it, by the end of the year. As I've said previously, in the next fiscal year, if we are successful in our recruiting efforts for the next fiscal year on the cash side of personal services, we will be almost $500,000 short. So we will be having to seek an increase in personal services. We will also be having to seek an increase on the NPS side to cover things like rent and utilities and the basic kinds of things that keep the agency going. There's some additional infrastructure improvements, systems improvements that we want to make that will also require additional funding. But that's for the next fiscal cycle. And our efforts in that respect will be starting soon as we look forward to the next cycle.
So Sandy, just to be clear, before we move past that point, am I understanding it correctly that if we were fully staffed and fully operational, we would see a $500,000 deficit? Did I understand that?
It's almost $500,000 deficit on the cash side. On the appropriation side, we talked about this at the last meeting, at the April meeting. I'm sorry, at the May meeting. We talked about the disparity that exists between the appropriation and the amount of cash that DOD releases. We would be on the appropriation side almost flat. I think it's about a $12,000 or so shortfall overall. But on the cash side, it's $492,000, I think, that we would be short. And our plan is to fill out the organizational structure that we've targeted. And in addition, there are, as I said, systems improvements that we would like across the agency that have not been made. There are things that are still left to do on the lobbying application that are important, that are priorities for the agency. The financial disclosure statement filing system can stand updating. It's an aging system. It works well enough, but it doesn't work as well as we would like it to work. And there are features we would like to have that we don't. Yes, Commissioner Edwards.
What is the gap between, could you explain the gap between cash and appropriation? Well, I don't understand that.
The best explanation I can give is that it's in the nature of a reserve. It's almost as if it's a holdback. As I understand it, I may turn this over to Mariana, or I'm gonna if I'm going too far astray in explaining it. We have the appropriation, but it's part of the management plan.
Yeah.
But it's not
that
self-imposed.
the Division of Budget imposes.
So they hold back a certain portion
They do,
of the cash.
yes.
Of the appropriation.
And normally,
They don't give us advances, they just give us,
they give us just that cash for the year. Now, if throughout the year, our expenses, we seem to exceed the cash, then we work with them and point and identify how much cash we'll need to carry through the year, but that is a reserve to ensure we don't go over our appropriation.
wait a minute. So they hold it back so do we have a reserve in our budget? In other words, do we have a reserve line item in our budget? So that could be replenished as opposed to us waiting for.
Yes, so you, in the budget, it's broken down with your appropriation of the 8 million and then the cash of the like 7154 for personal services. The rest is in a reserved account.
The rest of the total budget's in the reserve account?
The difference between the appropriate
So is
cash.
there a way in which you can write your budget to avoid this gap?
So,
Because it sounds to me that, I mean, what's the impact of the differential between the
so I know with
cash and the appropriation? What's the impact of that?
I do know that with the years I've been either assisting with the budget or working directly with the budget, like I have this past year, budget has always pushed that we maintain our cash. And it may be an overall
like state overall budgeting, that they count for that cash overall in the beginning of our budget. Obviously, throughout the year, if there's unforeseen expenses that have not been part of our initial budget, then DOB will work with us to ensure that the cash is released as needed. But that cash goal, they always want us to meet on a year-to-year basis.
So does it result, for example, in our not paying bills on time?
No, it doesn't.
Also, I'm just trying to understand the fallout between not having the cash on hand to complement the appropriation. It's gotta be some fallout. It's $500,000.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, that's the extent of how I understand that reserve works.
Yeah, we have not encountered that issue thus far. We've been able to function within the appropriation. But
with all the new additions that we're now undertaking, all the advancements in terms of technology, et cetera, you don't foresee any impact?
I do foresee an impact next year. We're not projecting it. If you look at TFC, we're not projecting that we're going to have that crunch this year. We will be able to, based on where we are in the cycle and how long it takes to add new employees, we're going to be okay. We will have to move surplus personal services allocations over to non-personal make budget, but we've not had a problem in working with DOB in effectuating that. That hasn't been an issue for it. So we will be well within both the appropriation and the cash allocation for this year. Next year we will have that delta to deal with, and our intention is to ask for budgetary increase so that we can stay within that cushion amount and still have it.
Cindy,
We've been good.
just quick question on this. Let's say we did approach the full use of cash, and we were running short or knew we were going to run short. Is the process then to ask the legislature or the budget office for additional cash based on the appropriation that we receive so that we can pay our bills? Would that?
Yes. Yes. It wouldn't be a at that point, we're within the appropriation. That's something we would deal with DOB, Division of Budget, and address.
Okay. So this is just a wrinkle in the budgeting process and the way in which the state accounts for, I guess, the public's money. I know we discussed it before, but it still seems a interesting way to do business.
I don't disagree with the characterization. I think that's correct. But I think it's a budgetary management philosophy that is used, and it has not been an issue for us thus far. And our goal would be to have relevant amounts increased next year to match our needs, so that we don't find ourselves in a position where, worst case, we can't pay our bills.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the budget? Great. So we up to per
Thank you.
diems?
Yes, I read these figures last month. They had gone in, and payment was pending, and these are the same figures that I read into under attachment D that were read into the record last time. Per diems totaled just under $16,000 for all commissioners, and those amounts included the October 10, 2023 legislative working group meeting, the February 21, 24 commission meeting, February 28th special commission meeting, the March 15th special commission meeting, and the March 20 commission meeting. So all of those meetings are covered by that not quite $16,000 total per diem payments that were made. Any questions? And these will be posted on the website.
They are now.
Uh,
So they are now the meeting materials.
They are as part of the agenda book. Again, as attachment D. Unless there are questions, next item is an update on the section 94(1)D comprehensive review. Talked about this at length previously. In accordance with Commission's direction, we're moving forward on 2 tracks. One track involves a survey. We had talked initially about both a qualitative and a quantitative survey. Having talked with some experts in the field now, we don't think we're necessarily going to need the 2 surveys to be conducted. We will have separate surveys for different constituencies. We have lobbying interests on the one hand, so the questions are a little bit different from the general questions we'll be asking about the enforcement of the ethics laws and the ethics regulations and statutes. That's on one side. On the other side, the review of the existing advisory opinions. Mayor Michael Sanders, Director of Ethics, will be conducting a master class focusing on what I've been calling the 7 advisory opinions, but the key advisory opinions that have been issued over the decades, since the late 1980s, when the state has had ethics agencies in place rendering interpretations and guidance under the state's ethics laws. There are also a few lobbying advisory opinions that Carol Megan-Matola, Deputy Director of Lobbying, will be talking about. A few advisory opinions that sort of fall outside the scope of the lobbying regulations. And the plan is for that master class to be conducted in July. We're still on track for that. We previously distributed a spreadsheet summarizing each of the several hundred advisory opinions that have been rendered. Some of them have been superseded by others, so they're not all in effect, but there are hundreds of advisory opinions that have been issued over the years. And Michael will be distilling those and explaining the key takeaways from them. Commissioner Edwards.
I have a question. All right, I'm just a little confused. I just need clarification. What I understand now is that you originally decided to do, the original plan was to do a qualitative and quantitative analysis to gain insight into the various processes we conduct under various departments. You have since consulted with an expert in the field that says we no longer need to do a quantitative or qualitative analysis, but instead hold a master class?
No. That's the commission determined that we should be looking at the advisory opinions and understanding the import and tenor of the advisory opinions independently of the process of querying relevant constituencies about the efficacy and the workability and the sufficiency of the ethics laws and lobbying laws. Section 94(1)D calls for the commission to review the compatibility of the regulations and the advisory opinions with the statutory scheme. And also the efficacy of the overall scheme.
I understand that, but where does the qualitative and quantitative analysis come in? Is it one or the other or both? And where does it fit?
I can answer that if you want. Sure. So when we talked with actually 2 separate groups that we received proposals from, they said we could combine them into one so that they didn't have to be separate surveys.
When you
So
say
that-
combine them, the quantitative and
So that
qualitative.
one survey will have both quantitative and qualitative questions.
And the qualitative studies won't be interviews, there'll be questions.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
okay. And the goal, and what are you trying to find out through the quantitative and qualitative surveys?
The goal is to find out, because the mission of the agency is to foster public trust in government. And the goal is to find out from the constituencies who are affected by the ethics laws, whether from observing how state government is working or actually having to administer or work under the ethics laws and the lobbying laws, whether they think those laws and the regulations and the advisory opinions are doing what they expect that regime to be doing. Are they successfully creating a workforce that is free of conflicts of interest, where government is working in the interest?
And you compare the two. You
Of the public.
compare the quantitative, qualitative piece will be compared with the advisory opinion to see if they're consistent.
We want to see if there are proposals for change, if folks, whether they're in law enforcement or they're general counsel at agencies, or if they're attorneys who represent lobbying interests or lobbyists themselves, for example, whether the laws, in their view, are effective in doing what they're supposed to do, whether compliance is too burdensome or too lax. If they find that whether folks are slipping through the cracks or aren't able, or they can't recruit employees, for example, in agencies because, say, the post-employment restrictions are too strict, or others may think they're not strict enough. And we know there's a diversity of opinion. And so we want to reach out as broadly as we can
And how
to
broad is
elicit
that? How many, what's the number? How many people are you trying to reach out?
Oh, it's gonna be
it's vast.
upwards of 8,000 to 10,000 surveys, yeah.
And it's through questionnaire.
It'll be like a Survey Monkey online
Got it.
link.
And who's administering it? Is it an outside group or us?
So it's both is kind of, we're gonna be sending it out, but we're gonna be working with, we've got it narrowed down to 2 proposals, which will be making the decision this week. And they are going to review the surveys, make suggestions on how to make them, ensure that we're getting the information that we want and that it's an easier survey to flow so more people will answer it. And then we are going to take that instrument, and we'll share it with all of you, of course, and put it in SurveyMonkey, and we'll be in charge of distributing it because we have all the lists. We can pull the list with ITS and we'll send it out and send out the reminders. But then once we have the data, the vendor's going to analyze it, identify themes, and do all of that stuff that we do not have the expertise in.
Can I just say one more thing? I mean, it sounds like it's a great idea. I'm comfortable with the approach, but I'm sure that your experts talk about, the increasing the potential of people being authentic in their responses. And sometimes when it's not independent, people hold back on their comments when they know the groups that they're criticizing is going to be having access to their material. So how do you safeguard against that? And have you considered having everything done by an independent?
We had considered that. It's an interesting point you raised though, but it was more cost effective for us to do it ourselves.
Are the responses anonymous?
So they are, I forget what the word was. They're not totally anonymous. You can't do it that way. Like it's not possible to do it that way, but because they have to, it goes to an email, so it has to be like coupled that way. But we do put something in there saying, if we want to follow up with more and to ask more questions or get more information from you, would you be willing to hear from us? If so, please put in your email address. So we won't contact anybody unless they assent to that and say yes. But what we're really more interested in is there's a lot of demographic questions with like, are you in private sector? Are you in public sector? Are you a lobbyist? Are you a client? Are you a general counsel? And looking at the themes across those type of categories rather than on the individual level.
I'm only saying that we all know at least those of us who research, that people are sensitive to giving authentic information about how they view whatever is being studied, particularly when
that's a good point.
particularly when it's negative.
We'll
And if
discuss
you
that.
really want an honest, I mean, you don't keep, I can't even say you really want an honest. I'm saying if you want to maximize the potential for authentic data, you might want to think about the cost associated with going with an outside entity. I understand that this, is probably a cost factor, but the question is, what are we really trying to get at? And is it worth the investment? I mean, I just don't want a whole lot of data that people's going to just, say what needs to be said in order to get this thing done. But they've got to, and if you can't do it outside, you got to find a way to craft it in a way that people are very comfortable with understanding where your job begins, where our role begins in collecting data, and where it ends. Because it just, I mean, think about your own self when you're going to read, someone asked me to write a report about the executive director, and they're going to keep it confidential from him. Really? And you want me to tell you the truth? And I'm just saying,
No, that's a good point.
I'm
That's a
just
good
saying
point.
that you might want to just think about that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Our thought was that people might be more willing to open the email if it came from a familiar email address from us rather than.
But you can do that by introducing it. This is what we're trying to do.
But I wonder if the issue might not be more of not how the information gets introduced to the employees of the state. I'm sorry, the clients of the state. Let me put it that way, or the subjects of the survey, but rather how their responses are protected. It seems, Commissioner Edwards, that may be a little bit more what you're getting at. That people know that their identities are protected somehow in their responses. I think you're suggesting that the responses may be more authentic.
Well, I think the way we're going to have to address it, because we've looked at the cost and the dynamics, we do need to do a substantial amount of follow-up to get a sufficient sampling back. We had talked originally about actually querying a sample rather than the entire population. And we've been persuaded by the discussions we've had that we pretty much have to send this out to everybody to get a meaningful response. But we have to look at whether we can craft the questions in a way that we won't have that kind of bias built into it, where the respondents are going to craft or tailor their responses to what they think we want to hear.
Right.
Because we're doing this, and it's in lieu of having a public hearing or public hearings, for thousands and thousands of people, which would be a protracted process. I mean, here we want to reach as many people as we can, and there aren't many alternatives to doing that at this point. Maybe we'll find out it's not as effective. So we think it will work. We're being told that if we craft the questions properly, we can. And we're going to be going to constituencies that hopefully will understand that we're actually eager to get their feedback, and we need their candid feedback. And if they want to move the needle in some way, they're going to have to be candid in their responses, or it's not worth their time in responding to the survey. But it's going to be a lot of work getting the responses back. Conceivably we could put a filter between them and us.
Or even smaller sample size. You mentioned a focus groups, they work. If you say we have an X percentage of the population you reached and focus on their needs, and they can reflect the general need. At least I'm gonna let it go because it's your.
Yeah, I mean the experts we've talked with have didn't think a sample approach, at least from at the survey level, would be effective. But that it's an excellent point. We'll have to craft the survey in a way, hopefully that will I don't know if we can eliminate any possibility of bias or that kind of distortion, but at least minimize it. And maybe there are filters we can put in to adjust.
Right. And that's why we're looking to hire experts to help us with.
So I guess we can not only assess the information we get back, but assess the process as well once it's done, and to see if it served us in the way that we'd hoped, that we anticipated.
Yeah, and I should be, this is one step in the process. The next step will be, once we have the analysis, to distill it into actionable items, which we will then be incorporating into the next annual public hearing process in the fall. So we'll be going out again. That will obviously not be blinded. At that point, we will be asking individuals to come in and testify and submit written comments on those proposals. So it is a multi-step process.
Right.
And we're on track.
Okay.
So Michael, recap, Michael will be conducting the master class in July. We will be hoping to get the survey out, ideally in July, and have results back in August, September, and have something to release and schedule public hearings in the October and November timeframe.
Public hearing, yes, in October, November, depending upon, when we get the results back from the vendor and have discussions with this group to see when would best be moved forward.
All right. So we're clear on that process, and are we ready then to move to the next item on the agenda?
Chairman, questions in New York?
Hold on one second. Vice Chair Austin?
How are we going to let the individuals who are being surveyed know that this isn't the typical survey they receive from their doctor, their pharmacist, their dog groomer, and everybody else? How did we do? Our emails are loaded with requests for surveys to be filled out, and this well could be treated in that way. How are we going to convey to our audience that we hope to hear from that this is something more serious and something that deserves their not only their attention but their truthful responses?
So, before the survey itself is sent, we had planned to send a note to the groups, letting them know to look for the survey and that we'd appreciate the feedback. We want honest feedback so that they would know that it's coming before it's actually in their inbox. And we also plan to tease it in at least our lobbying newsletter, because it's going to go out to everybody who gets that. So it won't be like they're just getting the survey and will not have hopefully heard of it before. They will have known that it's coming, because we're going to do a little outreach before we send it out.
All right. Looks like Commissioner James.
I share Claudia's concern that we may not get honest responses. And I've participated in surveys in other organizations where they've told me that the response was going to be anonymous. So I don't understand why it is we can't devise a method so that the responses are anonymous. And then if we tell people that, they're probably more likely to take it seriously.
That's something that we raised in meeting with the vendors, and they just said it wasn't possible to be totally anonymous. I'm not an expert at that end.
Yeah, I mean, it, at the very least, it would introduce the cost component. In trying to blind the results, we would have to put an entity between us and the submitters. Because these are going to be coming in electronically. We're going to want follow-up to be done, whether we're doing it or the vendor is doing it, in order to get a sufficient number of responses, I should say, so that we can have some kind of level of statistical significance in the responses we get. If we only receive a handful, it's not going to help us much in the process. They may be thoughtful comments, but we won't know how widespread or not particular concerns are, whether they're positive or negative.
We can get updated proposals and see how much it would add. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of.
Well, I think you can convince me that having an independent body do this for you is so absorbent that we have to do an alternative. Well, my question is, why are we doing it? I'd be convinced if you would say, I could be convinced that it is so outrageously expensive that we have to go with this debt.
We can ask, that's all we can do.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have.
What was Emily's response?
We'd have to ask for updated bids, right, from the various entities to see what the additional cost would be to go down that path.
But we also need to talk with them about the extent to which they think it's going to be necessary to blind the responses based on the kinds of questions we're asking. It's not probing personal questions. On the other hand, one can see some respondents being reluctant to say, for example, they don't think any lobbying regulation is required at all, and they don't comply with the lobbying laws. I don't think we're going to see responses like that. Our questions are not going to be crafted in a way we don't think that will intrude on that. But again, we'll have to see what the experts say.
Is this one, how many vendors are you vetting?
We've vetted three.
We've vetted, 3. One was cost prohibitive, way higher than the other 2.
So when you go back with our concerns, you're going back to one vendor?
2, right.
We'll go back to both.
Yeah, yes.
All
I
right.
just have one thing.
Other question here? Sure, go ahead.
I just wanted to add one thing that I think it's important that the survey is one of the tools that we're using to get feedback from our constituents, and that it has limits, and that we're using other tools too. When we having done a survey with one of these vendors, we got what was apparently a record-breaking, historically amazing response rate of about 10%, which was shockingly high. And I think speaks to being realistic about what's possible with an electronic survey, that it's going to be limited. It's going to be motivated by people who have grievances, are more likely to fill out a survey than people who don't. And we'll take all that into account. I agree with the thought that's been raised, that it's definitely worth pricing out anonymity. I think our experience was that lawyers are remarkably willing to share their candid and negative feedback compared to other audiences. So we may find that with our subset versus some of the other constituents we're surveying, like government officials who are not lawyers, who maybe are less willing. But I just wanted to add that I think in broader perspective, it's great that you all are also using other ways of gathering feedback, and that's useful.
That's useful if you could tie it to your research and triangulate. That would work. If you tell me we're going to triangulate it, then I can have that conversation. But they have to be linked to the research.
Well, we had a public hearing for first. We will be having another public hearing. We are planning, we don't have the results yet, so, advisedly, to use the takeaways from the survey to inform the next round of questioning for the public hearing that we'll be conducting. And we will be inviting the same constituencies, at least, and potentially others, to participate in the public hearing as well.
But I thought that the survey was going to be prepared in time for the public hearing.
It will be, yes.
Right, so then we're going to take the feedback from the survey and figure out, okay, what of this feedback do we think are viable action items, like Sandy said, and then we could get feedback on potential action items going forward at the public hearing. So if there's new proposals.
Okay. I think I can have this conversation offline. This is taking a lot of time, but that doesn't constitute triangulation to me.
And like I said, I'm not an expert, so I don't even know what that means, so.
I would suggest
data in different perspectives.
Commissioner.
So they're going to be looking at, I would have to rely on our vendor for that, and we can certainly bring that up, but they are going to be looking at different themes, different populations, different demographics, and what that data means, and that should be in the final report. So if there's specific questions you think we should be posing to them?
Well, I would suggest that maybe we do this offline and see if we can get more of Commissioner Edwards' concerns addressed.
But I think it's a great idea. I don't want to come off as negative. I think it's a great idea. I'm glad you're going in this direction. It sounds like you're getting good advice, and I trust your judgment as you move forward. They're just concerns I have.
Yeah,
I'm
well,
happy to discuss offline.
yeah, and we're definitely going to be taking these observations and suggestions back to the experts we've been consulting, and that will inform the process. And we will see what the cost impact is. We'll try to do it that way. Right, thank you. Next item, attachment E. Keith St. John, our general counsel, put together an excellent chart. The actual legislative proposals that have emanated
Yeah, so what you'll find behind tab E, I thought it's just for your own sort of edification. In addition to the several bills that we had advanced as part of this agency's legislative program for the 2024 session year, you'll see those highlighted in orange because I know Commissioner Cardozo likes colors. So I've highlighted the bills that made up our own package, but I thought it might be useful for you to have an appreciation for some of the other types of bills that either directly or indirectly impact the work and the mission of this organization. I've included a list of those bills as well, just to give you a sense of where or how far they moved in the legislative process for this year. You'll see many of them died in committee. Some of them were successful enough to at least get reported out of one committee and then die in another committee. Or the big winners here were those bills that actually made it through committee, made it to the floor, and then died on what's called the third reading calendar. Bills that are on the third reading calendar are all eligible for a floor vote. It's just a matter of the legislative leaders deciding which bills to allow to go to that floor vote. So if you've got questions, I can try to answer them. But again, it's just a recap of ethics-related legislation that I thought you might have some interest in.
So we have Commissioner Cardozo and then our Vice Chair, Austin.
Well, first of all, I want to thank Keith and the staff for the color, at least the colored items, the colors that I like. But I wonder, first of all, it's clear that we're making more progress in the Assembly in the Senate than we are in the Assembly. But are there lessons to be learned? And in addition to what advocate groups may want us to seek, are there suggestions as to how we should lobby some of these bills in the coming year to be gained from our experience this past year?
Well, I think those are good questions that we will continue to wrestle with as we put together our legislative program for next year. It may go without saying that as early as we can get bills introduced, the better. And then it's a matter of just finding the resources to stay on top of those bills and manage their track or traction in the two houses of the legislature. So it's a lot of work, and it'll just require staying on top of it to the extent we've got resources to do that.
Well, if I could just then add, it seems to me that immediately following this obviously will impact the annual meeting, we should really commit ourselves to trying to identify our legislative agenda for 2025 as early as possible between, with staff and working with, I think we should have a legislative committee of a few commissioners dealing with it so that we don't wait until January to decide what to push. Then obviously we have to decide how to push it. But I think the sooner we start these efforts with the legislature, the better.
Vice Chair Austin?
Agreed.
Thank you. I just had a relatively minor comment other than thank you to Keith and the staff. I'm curious, I see legislation on the second page, Senate 5005, that requires JCOPE to develop and maintain campaign finance. So do they know JCOPE doesn't exist anymore?
So all this suggests to me is this is an old bill that was originally introduced when there was JCOPE. And should this bill actually move in committee or onto the floor, I'm sure that it would get amended to reflect the new agency's name.
I mean, I think, I would add that the positive takeaway is, we know that these proposals are on the radar screen, at least of some members of the legislature. And to the extent that challenges were encountered, we can now go back to those legislators and to their staff to find out, what challenges they face in pressing the legislation, what feedback they got, if any, if there was negative pushback, what we can do to address it. So we can be much more targeted in the next session and how we approach advancing these pieces of legislation.
Right, and another important part is that we've established relationships with these members, which up until then we really haven't, and I've been keeping them in the loop in all of the things going on with the court decisions, as well as, sending them things like our training report, our annual report, so they see a steady drumbeat from us now of things that we're doing and things that's going on. So that relationship has been established. The feedback I get is generally positive. So we're not an unknown entity to them. And they'll be expecting us to come back early in the year and say, okay, this was introduced last year. It's a new biennial session. Can we get it introduced again? Would you be willing to introduce it again this year? And in addition, we have some new proposals that we want to talk to you about. And I think they'd be willing to talk with us, and we'll have to see again where the committee chairs are, because Senator Breslin is going to be retiring after this session, so there'll be a new committee chair there. And so we're kind of just figuring out too, like in the assembly, it's more Assembly Member McDonald with Government Operations who took on our bills rather than the Ethics Committee. So we're just, this year we're kind of exploring, getting our feet wet, figuring out how to establish these relationships, and now we have a running rapport with them, which is great.
Mm-hmm. And then we can refine our priorities as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And we will have, I believe, new priorities or more refined priorities coming out of the comprehensive review process as a second hearing. Commissioner Evans.
I just need a clarification. I just want to be clear on what I'm understanding here. These highlighted, items highlighted in orange, they represent the agenda items, the legislative agenda items that we put forth.
Correct.
All of which died except for one, which is the one that died on the third reading calendar.
We had two Senate bills that died, that made it out of committee, and they died on the third reading calendar, 9010 and 9257.
And that has a chance of going forward. Otherwise,
Only if they come back.
Well, the legislature's not in session anymore, so for all intents and purposes,
it died. Everything?
everything will need to get reconsidered.
And I just want to know, a lot of things like this year at the very end of session because of Governor Hochul's change of heart on congestion pricing. As one blogger put it, that took the wind out of the Capitol in the final days of session. And there were a lot of things that were much more high profile than our initiatives that didn't get done. So that kind of threw a monkey wrench into the whole session at the end.
I will say,
no, it just didn't get done.
Correct.
Yes, exactly.
I guess I'm concerned about the fact that we can't do video conferencing for our committees for another whole year.
Well, that was a challenge from the beginning because the governor had made a commitment to continuing 103-8 for at least another year.
Right now it's in the budget bill.
Thank you.
I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm gonna say it anyway. If I were a Martian and I came to Earth and I wondered whether or not there was robust interest on the part of relevant parties for an effective ethics commission, and I took a look at this list, it wouldn't take very long for me to conclude that maybe not. That's all I'll say.
Yeah.
Shall we move on? Thank you, Keith and company.
You're welcome.
General counsel and company.
Thank you. Before we go into executive session, let me just note that as we do every month, the master guidance law is at the front of your materials, or maybe in the back. And if you have any questions about that,
We do that in executive.
staff will be,
Executive.
yeah, in executive session. Just didn't want to be, yep, for executive session.
All right.
Okay.
Speaking of, are we ready for a motion to enter into executive session pursuant to Public Officers Law, Section 105 and Executive Law 94, subsection 11, to address matters concerning employment of personnel, pending litigation, and investigative and enforcement matter that is confidential pursuant to Section 94 of the Executive Law. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
So Vice Chair Austin and Commissioner Edwards, all those in favor of adjourning to executive session, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Right, we are adjourned to executive session. Thank you.
You are live.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to this May 26th meeting, June 26th meeting of the New York State Commission on Ethics in Lobbying and Government. We're going to ask our Executive Director, Sanford Berlin, to give us a summary of what transpired in our executive session.
Thank you, Chair Day. In executive session, the Commission discussed matters related to litigation and legal advice. The Commission discussed an application for an exemption from the post-employment restrictions pursuant to Public Officers Law, Section 73(8)(b). The Commission discussed informal guidance pursuant to Executive Law 94.7 and Part 931. The Commission approved 2 reports pursuant to Executive Law, Section 94.10F, and the Commission closed 12 matters, including 11 matters received by COA, 1 matter received by the prior agency and carried over from it, and the Commission discussed several other investigative matters.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the public agenda is the adoption of proposed amendments to the Commission's regulations at 19 NYCRR, Chapter 20, Part 943. That's behind our attachment F. And is that Carol?
That's Carol.
Yes.
Oh.
Okay, so for all 3 rulemakings, we didn't receive any official public comment. There's been no substantial revisions to any of the rulemakings. So today, we're seeking authorization or a vote to proceed with notices of adoption on all 3. But before I get to that, there's one item I just wanted to bring to your attention. The one regulation dealing with responsible party. In the impact statement, which is not part of the rule, not the text of the rulemaking, so it's not a substantial revision. We had an effective date of January 1 for all 3 rules. For the responsible party changes, we're changing the effective date in the impact statement to December 1st to correlate with the release of the next biennial, the 2025 Statement of Registration. And to have that in place, we need to have that coordinated with the release of that Statement of Registration. So, and the only other thing I'll point out in that regard is that any filings submitted after 12/1 or after comply with that regulation. Any filings submitted before that time will not have to be amended or will not be affected. So I just want to bring that to your attention. Again, it's not a substantial revision. And today we are seeking authorization or a vote to proceed with notices of adoption on all 3. I believe we could do it in 1 vote or we could do it in 3, but it'd be faster with 1, I mentioned.
Is there a motion to that effect?
So,
Looks like Commissioner Groenewegen was the first person I saw. Is there a second? Commissioner Ayers, all right. Is there any more discussion?
Yeah, let me just add, Carol may have mentioned it, and I missed it. There were no comments received. Is that
Right.
correct? With respect to any of them? Okay.
Any more discussion? Any questions?
No, we just want to make sure the motion reflects that we're going to vote on all 3 at once.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And Commissioner Cardozo?
just had a question. Is it clear on the responsible party? You sign as a lobbyist, you sign it, a lobbying client. Is it clear that you know that you're going to be the responsible party? And I recall when I signed it a number of years ago as the president of a not 501c3, a C4, I'm not sure it dawned on me that if there was a improper statement, that I be the person responsible. Is it clear to whoever signs it that they're not just signing some administrative provision that has no consequences?
Yes, the attestation that goes along with signing that and submitting the document is an attestation that the filing is true under penalty of perjury. And also to even set yourself up as the responsible party, you have to go into the system, and there's another attestation that you are who you say you are and that you are going to be responsible for the filings. And that has to be set up before the entity itself can even submit the filing. So yeah, it is very clear.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, are we ready to vote? All those in favor?
I have a quick question.
Sure, go ahead.
Very quickly, there are fines that are listed for the failure to comply after certain periods of time. Is there ever first of all, do we have the power to, and second of all, is there any thought with regard to suspending one's ability to be a lobbyist in the event of the failure to egregiously fail to file? I'm sure that's not the word we would use, but a serial non-filer to have a greater penalty than just what's listed here.
I assume you're referring to the late filing fees
Right.
in the regulation?
Right.
No, I mean, these are, the late filings are statutory, and it is in the statute that it can be, the due dates are set in statute, and the penalty is up to $25 a day for regular filers, up to $10 a day for the first-time filer. We actually came up in the regulations with blocks of time and flat fees that are actually underneath the $25 and $10 per day. But that is all statutory.
Okay, thank you.
So there are no other penalties associated with the late filing.
With mere late filing, as
With mere late.
distinguished from unregistered lobbying, that's knowing and willful, which does carry a very severe penalty.
Right, that's separate and apart from these regulations, though.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anything else before we vote? Questions, comments? All right, all those in favor of the motion that we approve all three of these rules changes? In total, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, the motion carries. And the next thing I see on the agenda is an application for exemption from the revolving door restrictions.
Yes, this is the same matter that the commissioners discussed in executive session. And the redacted application is next to the public session agenda as tab G, and that's in redacted form.
Motion to approve.
Motion. Second.
Who was the first? I heard the so move. That was Commissioner Cardozo, seconded by Commissioner James. Any more discussion on this one? All right, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. Proposed staffing revision plan pursuant to Executive Law 94, subsection 6, subsection F.
Yes, this is the table that was circulated to commissioners yesterday by email. If you need hard copies, should be hard copy available to all commissioners. Everybody have them?
Yes.
As I have announced from time to time, in the course of commission meetings, staff has been continuously reevaluating the configuration of the commission under the staffing plan that was approved in 2023 by commissioners. And we have been entertaining proposals for various kinds of changes, both aimed at streamlining processes that the commission carries out, and also at facilitating recruiting individuals. So in some instances, we've looked at upgrading certain positions. In other instances, we've looked at, in 4 instances, creating new positions, reducing numbers of staff in other positions, and moving some folks around to jobs that they could more efficiently do under a reorganization. If you look at the chart, if you look at the far right, in the last column, you'll see the new positions that have been created. There are 2 technical positions that have been created for the purpose of dealing with large amounts of data that we're handling, and also in assisting staff in interfacing with state ITS and working on various projects. So there are 2 positions of that kind that we're looking at creating. In addition, in the investigations group, we formerly had the position of chief investigator. We have determined that it would make more sense that the incumbent in that position retired in 2023, late 2023. And what we would like to do is create a second senior investigator position. Administratively, that will work much more effectively. We'll have 1 senior investigator at the New York office, 1 in the Albany office. In addition, we have created the position in compliance, audit, and review of an assistant director to assist the deputy director. The position will be half-time administrative, half-time auditor. We're going to fill an auditor vacancy in that division. That will allow more throughput. We'll have the horsepower we need to actually conduct the audits and the reviews, but we'll also, as a result of that, have an additional administrative burden in the review stage on those reviews and those audits. And having an assistant to the deputy will facilitate that process. In addition, we're filling the position of assistant director in the financial disclosure unit. That position has been vacant for a while. We want to fill it. We're going to be moving one of the compliance auditors who currently has been working in FS reviews and audit and compliance, moving her over into that assistant director position. And there are a number of other regrades that we're planning to make, upgrades. Moving some of the grade 11s, which have been very difficult to recruit for, move those up to grade 14, move some 14s to grade 18. Those are reflected in the chart. The net effect of the various moves is we will keep the head count, the projected head count, at 68. We currently have just over a dozen positions that remain vacant. We'll be moving forward in filling those positions, as I said earlier. We received quite a few applications for deputy director of admin. We've targeted a couple of candidates who we think look quite good. We're going to be making a decision hopefully shortly in filling that position. And as we lay individuals into these positions, we will be within our budgetary allocation, both appropriation and cash, through the end of the year. Again, we will need to seek an increase in cash for next year to fill out the plan. And that would have been the case with or without these moves. But I would like formal approval from the commission. Happy to answer any questions.
Question,
Commissioner
Vice Chair Austin.
Sandy, when you say it'll be good to the end of the year, do you mean the fiscal year or December?
No, I mean the fiscal year. The fiscal year, we will be in positive territory from a budgetary perspective, and we will need to, and we'll have the ability to move some of the surplus on the personal services side over to cover the additional amounts we need on the non-personal services side. So we'll be good through the end of the year, and as I said earlier, we will begin working on the new budget in the next couple of months to cover the increased costs we will have going forward once we fill out all of these positions.
I have a question if that's in order.
Sure, go ahead, Commissioner.
Thanks. Thanks. Sandy, I'm very happy to vote to approve the staffing plan if you want. My question is, I'm a little concerned about the commission trenching on the executive director's domain. As I read the statute, it's the commission through the executive director shall appoint such staff. And I sort of think of appointment of staff as a core executive director function. So my only reservation is that I sort of think staffing is up to you, and I'm not sure that we as the commissioners should be. I'm not sure why we should sign up on a staff.
Well, executive director will oversee hiring. The approval of the staffing plan, as proposed by the executive director, does go to the commission for approval.
Of the plan. Okay.
The plan itself.
I mean, I'm happy to
the plan itself, and the numbers are the same. However, I feel much more comfortable in presenting to commissioners the changes that we're making to the configuration, not in any substantial way, but nonetheless we're adding some positions that we haven't previously had in the plan. We're reducing the number in a number of categories, and we are regrading some of the positions.
Okay, I'll just say that my view is that the executive director should be entitled to such deference on these matters that I would vote to approve nearly anything within reason, and I'm always grateful to be in.
And always much appreciated and grateful for that.
Well, Commissioner Ayers, are you then prepared to make a motion to approve the revised staffing plan?
So moved.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second? Vice Chair Austin, any more discussion? All those in favor then, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Right. Thank you. The motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Then,
Can I ask a related question?
sure.
Partially related. I noticed in some booklet that at least I got entitled Human Resources Procedures of the Commission. And just skimming it, it's a fat booklet of exhibits. We've never reviewed it, and I'm particularly interested in the discussion about performance evaluation program. And I wonder if at the next meeting we can have an explanation of this, and it's obvious it's critical that these standards be met. And I think it would be useful to put on the agenda, what is being done and are these deadlines being met, et cetera. And it would be useful for all of us to know how these procedures evaluating the 68 staff are being followed.
Great. If there's no objection, then we'll ask the executive director to speak to that at the next meeting.
I'd be happy to do that. And just as a preview, we are deeply in the midst of that process now. In fact, we're in the latter phases of it for the current year. So the evaluation process is being carried out. And I'll go through it in more detail at the July meeting.
Great. Thank you. Is there any new or other business to come before this body?
Are you going to mention the scheduling of the special meeting, Fred, or are we not going to have that?
Yes, but we haven't decided on a date. So why don't I ask someone on the staff, I'll let Sandy decide who, to poll us, and let's find a date between now and the July meeting. And once we get that schedule, we'll announce it to the public. But I think the week of July 8th or 15th would work for me, either in person or virtually. So we'll let the staff work on that with us, and then we'll announce it. All right.
All right, I will poll commissioners. That's workable.
It's hard to say.
Are there any other issues, any new or other business?
Oh, yeah,
Sure, go ahead. Ava,
thanks.
Commissioner.
Just two things. One, I wanted to follow up on discussion we had 2 meetings ago, I think, about some of the proposals that were made at last year's roundtable. There were a few that I think we haven't discussed as a commission that staff had indicated they would analyze, and that it would become part of the conversation in the next round of the comprehensive review and the public hearings and conversations that we'll be having about that. The specific proposals I'm talking about are the proposal to expressly add discrimination claims in addition to sexual harassment to our jurisdiction. The idea of including in lobbying filings support, oppose, or some other position, and the idea of requiring reporting to COLIG. There were a couple of others, but I think they've been addressed. Those are the ones that I have on my list.
Campaign reporting, is that?
Oh, campaign reporting, that's right. Fundraising, lobbyist fundraising was another thing that came up. And my thought was just that if and I may be missing things that have been in the meetings and that I forgot about, but if I'm right that the commissioners have not revisited those issues, I think it would be ideal, if it's possible, for us to have that conversation before we go into the whatever public meetings or conversations there will be with the group, so that we can say that we've had the staff analysis and that we've discussed it. Even if we reject the proposals, I think it would be helpful to have that conversation at some point between now and whenever those are. Maybe that's already what you all were planning.
You've been doing the staff analysis stuff.
I'm sorry, Emily?
Yeah, our plan had been to include those in the process leading up to the public hearing and in the process to the comprehensive review. And to make them part of putting those proposals out there with when we do the analysis of the takeaways from the survey.
Oh, I see.
Include those as well. They won't be specifically on the survey, but in addition to whatever takeaways and proposals we receive, and that will be assessed by the commission in anticipation of the public hearing.
Oh, okay.
We will have those as well.
Okay, great. So we'll be able to go into the public hearing saying, staff and commissioners have thought about this, and here's what we came to as a result of that conversation. Okay, great. The one that falls strangely in the cracks is the one that about what happens if people who've requested guidance speak publicly about that guidance, which was also something that came up about the roundtable, but we do have a draft proposal. So I just wanted to urge that be on the agenda for our next meeting, because it was on our agenda in April and we just didn't get to it.
Any other thing?
The other thought, totally unrelated, is I just wanted to put this out there for people and invite people to give me feedback between now and the next meeting if they want. I'm very concerned about the number of vacancies on the commission and the way that affects our ability to reach a quorum. I'm concerned that we may end up in a position where staff need an answer from us commissioners on something, and we just lack the bodies to get that answer to staff. And so what I want to suggest that people think about is whether it would be useful for the commissioners to vote on some kind of resolution urging our appointing authorities or urging the appointing authorities to fill those vacancies without waiting for the Court of Appeals to rule or whatever else they may be waiting for. Because in the event that we have another year before we get an answer from the Court of Appeals, I think it would be really helpful to have those positions filled. So if I don't hear otherwise from people, I may draft a resolution on that and bring it to the next meeting for discussion. But I just wanted to share that I was thinking about that in case people want to reach out to me with feedback. And by people, obviously, I mean staff as well.
I will I think that expletive was heard on the audio, so we need to be reminded that we're in public session.
I didn't hear an expletive.
I did.
Okay.
In the meantime, I'll just, while we wait on the resolution, since we are in public session, I will encourage, as I have in other settings, the appointing authorities to please proceed with appointing commissioners to this commission. But we can get a more formal resolution as as the body sees fit. I'm sorry? Okay. Is there any more business?
I'll wait and see it.
All right. Then is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of adjourning the meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we are adjourned. I want to thank the public, thank the staff, thank you commissioners. Thanks to everyone for all the hard work you do on behalf of the people of the state of New York. So thank you. And I'm just going to ask that we go out, we end the public session, and then I want to say one more word. Thanks.